this was composed by Brother Heru, Il, brother from Atlanta. We're going to go through some of this information because it's very pertinent to our situation. And this information, if you notice, comes from a historical standpoint about the origin of the Moral Science Temple of America, in which that you find later on that the Nation of Islam came out of, as well as also it had an affiliation with the UNIA up under Marcus Garvey. So actually there's a tie lineage between the UNIA, Moral Science Temple of America, as well as the Nation of Islam. Okay? So we'll go through some of the information. Hotep. Right here it says the lineage of the Moors is a long one but noble. It spans the sands of times over countless millenniums and also spans several continents. All right, I give you an overview for what they're talking about. You're talking about the cartonnage, in which that you're talking about Hannibal. Hannibal was a Moor, and you're talking about them coming from out of Put, in which that would be towards Somalia on up into Libya, coming out from those areas going into Europe. All right, which Europe is only 15 miles away from Africa. Actually, you know, if you was a good swimmer, you can swim there. All right, less than 15 miles. As they went into Europe, in particular Spain and Portugal, they began to take over. This was around the year 711. All right, 711 AD. They was there in Europe for over 800 years. All right. So from 711 AD to 1492, all right, this is where you get the tone of that Columbus sailed the ocean blue was actually during the same time that the last stronghold of the Moors, which was Granada, Spain, was given up by the Moors. The Moors left. Some of them went back to Africa, to their birthplace. Some of them went and came over here to the United States, or what then was called El Morocco. All right, that's what was the name of America during that time, was El Morocco. And El Morocco is where you get the term America from. Okay, from El Morocco. It did not come from Amerigo Vespucci. Right, that's a lie, because there's never no time in history that they ever used a European first name for any naming of any place. Okay, you got George Washington, you got Washington State, you got Washington D.C. They use the last names. All right, the surnames, as it's called. They don't never use the first name. So we know that Amerigo Vespucci was not his actual name. That's the name in which that they, I guess you say in a sense, Europeanized enough in order to place him in history, in order to state that this is where his name came from, or the name of America actually originated or is derived from. But that's a lie. All right? That's another lie that they told us in history in order to confuse us, in order to dumb us down, in order to steal the land from us. All right? So from 1492, the Moors ruled Spain for almost 800 years. Actually, all of Europe. Because if you read J.A. Rogers' Sex and Race, you'll find that Spain, Portugal, Germany, Austria, the Netherlands, the Moors ran throughout all of that. All right? And you'll see that our bloodline was on the throne throughout each of those, from those 800 years, our bloodline was on those thrones. All right, so that means when we mix them with the European, that the child in which that was born was that of royalty, and they sat upon the throne in Europe. All right, it's a known fact that you got Queen Elizabeth, Queen Victoria, and Queen Elizabeth to be, I guess you can say, connected in bloodline lineage to Queen Charlotte. Y'all know who Queen Charlotte is? The Charlotte Queen City of Charlotte is named after her. She was a Moor. Yeah, she was a Moor. Okay, so I mean black. She was black. You know what I'm saying? So you'll find that Queen Elizabeth and Queen Victoria is descended from Queen Charlotte. So that means they have black blood within them. So that means that here go this black blood seeping through the so-called royal bloodlines of Europe. That's why it was no problem that when Benjamin Banneker, aka Prince Hall, sent away for quote-unquote the charter in order to become for Freemasonry, he was given the charter by England. Because you know who sat on the throne at that time? King George III. King George III was a Moor. If you see some of his original pictures, you'll see how large his lips are. and how broad his nose is, and how curly his hair is. But see, they don't want you to know that it was our bloodline of the Moors on which that still ruled Europe until just recently. They want you to think of Prince Charles. You know what I'm saying? And
you think they had it all the time.
right. You know what I'm saying? When they done, understand when we talking about blood, this is what you have to look at, the Punnett square. You got big B, big B, big B, little b. You got little b, big B, and then you got little b, little b. In order to get recessive genes, it takes 1, 2, 3, 4 generations. So it takes 4 generations for them to get rid of or make our gene dormant or latent when we mix them with a European. On the other hand, we take them out, you know what I'm saying, for 3 generations.
But it takes them 4.
It takes 4 for them to make our gene latent.
Meaning,
in other words, dormant. In other words, for our features such as our nose and the lips won't pop up all of a sudden.
Oh, to make theirs dominant.
To make their stringy haired, pale skin, thin nose, thin lips to be more apparent within the bloodline. But during these 3 generations, we are there. And so you'll see on the bloodline on the charts, and remember, it only takes 1/16 of black blood to be considered a Moor. That's it. 1/16. That means 1 out of every 16 people. So you got 16 people in your bloodline, only one of the, if you snuck up in there somewhere, what that mean? Hold on, I don't know if y'all caught what I just said. That means that one of the Moors snuck up in out of 16 people.
Okay.
That whole line is henceforth what? Moorish. I didn't make this up. I didn't make the rules. This is their rules. This is their great father called Gregor Mendel. His name is Gregor Mendel. He is the one who came up with this Punnett square, as they call it. In other words, the square in which that dictates genetics. All right, this is what this does. This dictates the genetics. So, Gregor Mendel's, the so-called father, European father of quote-unquote genetics, is the one in which that brought forth this information. So, they continue going on with the information in which that they come up with the fact that 1/16 of blood of Negro blood makes you a Negro. So that's not me. That's their scientists. Even to this very day, they still quote the exact same thing. Okay? Now, so we go here. It says, the lineage of the rise of the Moors in the Western Hemispheres, the Americas began with Prophet Noble Ali. This part right here is not true. This part right here is the modern day time. We talking about historically, we talking about Mansa Musa. Mansa Musa. M-A-N-S-A Musa.
Moses?
No. Mansa Musa.
Mansa
Musa. And Mansa Musa, his brothers from his tribe came over to the Americas years prior to him. Years. I'm talking about like almost 200 to 300 years prior to him going or coming over to the so-called Americas. So it's the oral tradition within the village in which he was raised in. So he gets the notion in order to get 200 ships in order to come over here to the Americas. And guess what? There's no reports of him ever returning. Him nor any of his men. So hold up. So who did they come over to see? Well, according to history, you had the Olmecs. Or as they say within Mexico, the Olmecas. The Olmecas. The Olmecas were a group of people who came over here almost 6,000 years ago. All right? So almost 6,000 years ago, there was a group of hundreds and thousands of black people already here. Matter of fact, they was in the Yucatan Peninsula. which is actually what they call now Mexico. Matter of fact, the term Mexico is where you get the term, you can hear the derivative of the term Olmec. Olmec, where you get Mexico. Olmeca. Olmeca or Mexico. Mexico. So, now how come they kept the name, and guess what? You come to find out that the Olmecs came out of the Yucatan Valley Peninsula on up into the so-called states, as we now call it, or territories of the so-called U.S. And they situated themselves in the South. Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Delaware.
Delaware, yeah.
And it was known as the Nanacoats, known as the Washita, known as the Blackfoot, known as the Tar Heels, known as the Choctaw, known as the Cherokee, known as the Chickasaw, all these various names. But that was the Olmecs and their descendancy. So that's why when you read certain books in history, you'll find out that even white folks will have to concur that it was once said that the blacks ruled the South. Okay? So this is no joke. This is why Andrew Jackson was called to become a general in order to remove the black people that was here in North Carolina, in which they was called at that time Cherokee, to travel 1,500 miles, well, not even, about 915 until about 1,000, 1,200 miles across from North Carolina, over the mountains of Tennessee, Appalachian Mountains, on across into where? Oklahoma and Kansas. Years later, once again, like we said on the previous tapes, you find Black Wall Street. So they become, all of a sudden, if these so-called people who came from North Carolina started to put together what they call Black Wall Street, how the heck would they call it North Carolina Cherokee, but here it is in Oklahoma, they black. They keep changing up the names on y'all so that y'all won't know your identity, your morals. The word Indian comes from the word Indos. The word Indian comes from the word Indos. The word Indos means God's people. Indos means God's people. So when you talk about the word Indian coming from the word Indos, it just simply means God's people. The word Indi, in a matter of fact, Indi, or as you would say, indigo, is the color of black, blue, or purple. All right. So the term indigo actually describes as adjectives our complexion. Okay, our complexion. So it not only does it mean God's people, it also describes our complexion. So the word Indian became a so-called term utilized by Christopher Columbus for all of the dark-skinned people that he's seen. All right? Christopher Colombo, or as we would say, Cristobal Colon. All right, because that was also his name too. Actually, this is his Spanish name, Cristobal Colon, like the word colon. And as you see, he got the term B-A-L at the end. B-A-L is the name Baal. You look in the Holy Bible, Baal was one of the deities in which that Elijah went up against the people about. Because they was cutting themselves all up in order to worship this guy named Baal. B-A-A-L, or either it's spelled B-E-L. Baal or Baal. Same deity. That means that he had to have had some type of Phoenician roots. Because the Phoenicians are the ones in which that worship the god Baal, or the deity Baal. Okay, it was the Phoenicians. All right, in which that later on becomes the Canaanites. All right, that is more so of the accurate history as compared to what actually is on the paper right here. But that's why we want to go over it so everybody can have a clear understanding. Now, when it comes to Noble Drew Ali, and it says prophet, understand, this is not prophet considered by Islamic terminology. This is prophet by Webster Dictionary definition. All right, we'll go into Webster dictionary definition, and we'll find out what a prophet means. All right, right here, prophet, one who utters divinely inspired revelations, the writer of one of the prophetic books of the Old Testament, one gifted with more than ordinary spiritual and moral insight. Once again, one gifted with more than ordinary spiritual and moral insight. Well, if you go to 1 Corinthians, the 12th chapter, it specifically speaks of the gifts in which that you would be given once you raise yourself to Christ. All right, Christ is symbolic to nothing more than your crown chakra or your higher self. Once you come back in communion with the God within you. All right. Once that happens, you receive these inspirations, these visions, these miracles, these gifts of healing, these interpretations of tongues, these speaking in various tongues or languages that you never was taught before or prior to. And also the gift of faith, the gift of knowledge, of wisdom, of understanding. You receive all of these things. Okay? So this is the science. So a person who acquires these gifts is considered a prophet by Webster's dictionary terminology, not by Islamic definition in the terms of what would be called a nabi. The word is naba, a nabi. Okay, you have Nun, Alif, Ba, and you would have the A or the I, which would be the A would be up here, or either the I would be down there. So the word Napa, Nabi, actually comes from the word Nubi, which is short for the word Nubian. So actually, our whole race at one time was called those who was able to see, the prophets, through the term Nubian. You have the word Napa, Nabi, Nubi. And also within the Sumerian terms and Akkadian terms, they have the word Nebo. And the word Nebo means one who is able to see. One who is able to see. Once again, a prophet. So the word prophet, one who is able to see, coincides with the Hebrew terminology of El Roy. El Roy. Same word as within the English transliteration as Leroy. But Elroy means, once again, one who's able to see. The definition or terminology of a prophet. Okay? So once you raise yourself up to the third eye, you're able to what? See beyond the veils of the material plane. The material plane is what keeps you within the thinking process or the perception that this is all physical. And that everything that you see, touch, taste, smell, and hear is real. Because you think you can touch it, smell it, sense it, see it, hear it, or taste it. But once again, as we already told y'all on many occasions, .99999% of your atomic structure is empty space.
So that's why the prophet Isa said that there's a people who got eyes but they can't see.
But they can't see. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
But in the scriptures, it tells you in the book of Matthew, the 6th chapter, the 22nd verse, it specifically tells you that if thy eye be single, then thy whole body will be filled with light. So the eye symbolizes the third eye, or that first eye, or that eye in which that symbolizes the pineal gland. All right, which is the master gland of the endocrine gland system. You have 7 ductless glands: your pineal gland, pituitary gland, your thyroid glands, which is also connected with your parathyroid glands, your thymus gland, your spleen, also your adrenal glands. Is that connection is there, as well as also the within males the prostate, and the testes. Within the woman, the uterus, and what they call, quote unquote, the ovaries. Okay, So these are the 7 major glands in the body, but the gland in which that sits above all of them and controls all of them in their hormonal flow is the pineal gland. That is the master gland of the body. However, at the age of 7, the pineal gland began to go atrophied. It was once the size of a dime when you was born. And then it began to go atrophied and get about to the size of a pea. This is where the term pea brain comes in at. But you might have heard that terminology or that phrase said before.
Yeah.
So what happened is that once it reached that size, you now have to engulf it with blood in order to make it swell up, in order to give you that sight which is needed in order to look into the next realm, or what they call the astral plane. All right? So how do you do that? The same way in which that the male and the female clitoris and the male penis engulf with blood, with you focusing your desires and your energies to this level, you can also transform it and pull it up to this level and make it also engulf in blood in order to give you that sight in which that is needed. There's 144,000 crystals situated around that pineal gland. 144,000. You might have heard that term before. Mm-hmm. Also sitting around the pineal gland are 12 pairs of cranial nerves, known as within your Bible as the 24 elders or the 24 scientists. Once these 12 pair of cranial nerves are illuminated, you are able to take flight to the next level of consciousness, which is infinite consciousness. All right, you have 7 states of consciousness. You have interpersonal consciousness, intrapersonal consciousness, life consciousness, subconsciousness, superconsciousness, magnetic consciousness, and finally, infinite consciousness. At the level of infinite consciousness, you're able to go outside of your physical body and journey amongst the stars, because the word astral means star. So when it's talking about astral plane, it's talking about the star plane. So this is a person who has these capabilities. They take on the title prophet. So don't get spooked out when we read about Prophet Noble Drew Ali, because he actually had these abilities, which you all also possess. There's no one over a higher or ranked in various degrees. Only Allah knows that. You yourself, you can't read into another individual's heart or individual's mind in order to know or gauge the perception, you know what I'm saying, of them, or where they at on their spiritual plane. You can't do it. Only thing in which that gives clues is the fact of you feeling an auric field. And that might give you a little bit on understanding what is going on about the individual. But it still won't give you the totality. Okay? So we continue reading, and it states, once again, prophet, one's gift with more than ordinary spiritual and moral insight, an inspired poet, one who foretells future events, all right, predictor, an effective and or leading spokesman for a cause. Once again, an effective or leading spokesman for a cause, doctrine, or group. All right, a spiritual seer, disappearance of material sense before the conscious fact of spiritual truth. I gotta read that one again. That was deep. Because that's what we just finished talking about. Once again, the disappearance of material sense before the conscious facts of spiritual truth. So in order to get to spiritual truths, you must relinquish what? The material sight and its material senses. Okay. Now we can continue. There is no doubt or room for interpretation on these points. Many leaders have come and gone, but only one brought the Moors into the West through their nationality, and that was Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Now, understand, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, his family lineage, his last name actually was Turner. Prophet Drew Turner, as it was, Turner got dropped, Ali became the name. All right? But he was a Turner. His mother was Eliza Turner. All right? Eliza Turner. Look up on the computer and you find that there was a Native American tribe, as they called it, which actually was nothing more than a group of Moors, and which that was called Turnica. This is where the name Turner evolves from, or is derived from. All right? So from Turner to Turnica. Bishop McNeil Turner, who was affiliated with the African Methodist Episcopal church was a Turner family member. Nat Turner. Reason why he gave a Nat Turner lick was because he found out that this was his land, and his land was stolen from him through his bloodline. That he was turned into a slave. So once he found that once he read and he was able to read and he got certain amounts of information, he started going out and killing white folks and getting them up off his land because they was aliens. It makes me wonder why they even told us the story, as if we wasn't gonna be able to put the pieces of the puzzle together. You know what I'm saying? They could have doggone well just wiped him out of history, wiped him out of our thinking. You know what I'm saying? But they still taught him. But they gave us the illusion that he's supposed to have a vision from God. And that God told him to go and kill all the white folks. No, I mean, no, not necessarily. The vision that he had was the vision was actually much more proof written than so-called vision within the mind.